In this video we go from this spare board to this little diorama, which even contains pecking chickens. Hi, welcome back to Chadwick Model Railway. I'm Charlie. Now we had a friend drop in the other day with a 5-year-old, wanted to see the railway. So we brought him up, had a look around, and he was somewhat disappointed. He liked the railway, but he was disappointed the fact that we had no crashes. I, however, was somewhat relieved. But it did make me question about how entertaining it is for a child to view it. Anyway, now I went to a model railway show up at Calne the other day, a place in Wiltshire. I was invited up and I'm very grateful for the invite. Thank you very much, gentlemen. And at the layout, at the show in a gymnasium, there was a layout I particularly liked called Chiefly or Chevly. Because it was a great layout, it really was lovely, the detail, and it was running, it was faultless. But I did spot an animation there. And as you can see here, it's an animation that consists of pecking chickens. And I thought to myself, is that something that I'd like to incorporate into Chadwick, perhaps just as a little feature, so that when we get visitors here, they'll sort of be drawn to it. And I thought, yeah, I'll give that a go. How we turn it on and off, I could do it with a push switch, so a child could sort of press it and they react, or an on-off switch, or a timer, or get train controller to run it. So I thought really a push switch of some description would be best. So let's set about installing chickens. And now here is the little beast, and it's made by Weissman. It's a straightforward thing really. There's a little motor which rotates, and there's a magnet on there, and it sort of twitches the chickens. But where are we going to put it? Now I thought that we'd install it in this area here. We've got this signal box which controls the points on the top of the viaduct, and we need a little road to come in here. Obviously you need some fences, and then build an area here that would almost be like an allotment for the signal box staff, and then the hens would obviously generate eggs for them to have their fried breakfast and omelettes and this sort of thing, and then this would go into open sort of countryside, and I need to fence it off and sort it all out. So, and to control it, I thought that we would temporarily install a push button here, because I've got to build a facade that goes all the way along here, but we need a push button. So if I install it in this piece of timber here, so a child, your grandchildren can press the button sort of here and operate the hens. Hey, we have a plan. Well, here it is out of the packet, all straightforward. 2 wires, and the brown wire is the positive and the other one's a negative. So what I want to do is just test it, just to make sure it works before we go any further. It would be foolish to install it to find nothing happens. Oh, and there's our little hens feeding away. Beautiful. I think it's between 10 and 14 volts, the supply to this. Right, it's got a locating collar on the bottom, so we pull the collar off. And then there's the little motor unit itself to remove, which just pulls straight out, like so. And then we can put it into place, draw around it, and then sink it into the cork. So I think it would look better if it was actually sunk in. And that way we don't get so much of a ridge. Well, now I thought about putting a greenhouse in the area, and this line here sort of delineates from farmland to railway land, as it were. And I think what I'm also going to do is take out this piece of foam and extend the cork surface across, so get rid of this ridge. I'm not too sure why this ended up. Anyway, in for a penny, in for a pound. Where do we want our hens? Well, probably around here. And then obviously someone from a young man, grandson, granddaughter, can obviously see what's going on with these hens. So it's just a case of popping it there, popping it there, and drawing around it and putting it in place. So we'll do it there. Right. Lovely. Ooh. Nearly had a heart attack. Right. That's going to be where we drill, and we need a 12mm drill, and I've already put in some packing underneath, some bubble wrap to save all the bits. Now I've checked underneath, there are wires nearby but not in this area, so I just want to come in here My hens are wandering around. Clearly, this drill isn't as sharp as I thought it was. Right, get this area cleaned up, replace that with a piece of cork, and I'll get back to you. So just a ring of glue around the outside, and this should settle in rather well. Okay. Lovely. And then we have the clip which goes underneath and pushes, or pulls the unit down, locks it into place. And there we have it. Right, just need to let this go off, and then I'm going to start filling this in and then sort of ballasting the area. But also let's take a look at what's going on down here. Now, time's obviously gone on a little. I've replaced a piece of foam and painted it black. Now, with a switch, what I thought I would do is just install a simple push switch. So it's where you push it in to go on and off when you release it. And I'll leave a link to this in the Show More tab. And just did some basic wiring. Now, I've only locked it in with a couple of magnetic catches because this is not going to be the final sort of system in this area, because the whole thing needs a proper facade to finish it off. So that's just a little kind of botch, if you like, to last over the next few months, because I want to blank all this area in. But I'll just show you how it works with the switch. So it's wired up to the 12 volt basic supply of this end of the board, and if I press that power on, you can hear it all call in, and obviously my switch lights up with a nice inviting blue switch, blue light. Now if I press it in, as you can see, the chickens do their wiggling and their feeding, but this remains illuminated until, of course, you turn it off, and then the chickens stop. All straightforward, and the wiring really is no big shakes. As you can see, there's the live in, there's the neutral, and there's the switch line, and this is all kind of basic stuff. Right, next thing, of course, is what we're going to do in this area. Now, switching back to the other layout for a moment, we can see where the green is coming through where the chickens are. Now, I'm thinking that if I paint that area with this buff titanium, is it? Yeah, buff titanium, then hopefully we can get rid of that issue. I haven't watered this down at all, so we'll just have a little look and see how this stuff takes. The last thing I want to do is kind of immobilize my chickens, as it were. So I'm just going to paint around here before we come in here with a sort of a glue and a ballast to do the job a little better. Yeah, I think that'll do. I'll just paint the whole thing with this paint and get back to you. And now hopefully this will give a good base colour on which to do some ballasting. You notice I had my blue top on today because that's my gluing top, and fortunately, because I was just opening a tube of polyfiller which is obviously thoroughly bunged up, and I was squeezing it and it all kind of gushed out of the sides, as you can probably see. Ugh. Anyway, I'll use the stuff before it goes in the bin and just whap some of this in to fill up that little gap. Anyway, we appear to have got there in the end. Now I've got a couple of bags of ballast here from Specialist Aggregates. I've got Universal Trail and Universal Ground Cover. Now I think the Universal Trail one, being a sort of sandy colour, will do us a sand colour finish, whereas the ground cover will make more of a muddy look. So that should be ideal. So we now need to paint around this mound with PVA, and then when that's all done, sprinkle over the top our aggregates, and we should all be kind of good to go. Now clearly painting around these things is not without risk, so I really need to take my time here to make sure that I don't glue my chickens down, as it were. A little bit of a tedious task, this one, but something not to be rushed. And so after what seems a lifetime, we can get around to our sprinkling. First we'll use the ground cover. No scientific sort of methodology in this, just whap some on and hopefully it will stick to the glue. And then turning to the sandy mix of the trail cover should give it a bit of variation. Then all we need to do is come back in the morning and see how it's dried. Lovely. Well, it's now the following morning and I'm the proud owner of a can of air. So what I thought I would do is just blow this across here and try and take off any loose ballast. That didn't hang around, did it? Right, so that was stuff that wasn't glued down, and I can see that around the hens it is pretty good. So let's have a little closer look at that. But are they still pecking freely? Yes, marvellous. So what's next? So now I'm going to work on the area. I'm going to put some fencing around here, probably repaint the whole of this area, and then work on sort of the roadway and the rest of the bits and bobs. Lovely. Little bit of a change of plan. If you're a regular to the channel, you'll know that I use these Hobbycraft paints regularly. They're about £1 a go, so I'm just going to paint this in brown so that we don't get any of this awful white showing through. The last thing we want is our ground cover chipping and then be faced with the glaring white of my polyfiller. Lovely. Well, the paint's now all dry, and I've also installed some Pico fencing. It looks a little better. So now I need to turn my attention to the roadway. Now in the past I've used something called Smooth It from Woodland Scenics, and you sort of lay it down between pieces of tape, and the tape you sort of lay down in the road, like sort of this area here, another piece coming up the other side, and you put the Smooth It in between. And before you leap out and buy this is very similar to draft excluder, you know, so it's a bit overpriced, and that's what was called paving tape. So not necessarily a good bargain, or I'm certainly not recommending it, but this is the product that I'm about to use. So all you do is peel the back off and then sort of stick it where you think you want it. So I want it up in this area here. That's one side of my road, and then the other one will come up, and I'll sort of do a little bit of a parking area, I think. Just making it up as I go along, I must confess. So there we are with the tape stuck in place, and sort of I've got myself a Ford Transit, and he can do a little 3-point turn and park up there quite easily. Yeah, so that's kind of enough space hopefully for the staff. Lovely. So now I need to mix up the Smooth It now and fill this area in so it looks like it's a tarmac surface. Now there's little doubt in my mind that I probably made up too much, but hey, we'll cope. And it says you sort of pour it on. Well, let's not pour it on, let's put some in slowly and then sort of spread it out. And yes, I've made far too much. And clearly over this end I've put a piece of tape to act as a dam so it doesn't go cascading down the layout. And I've also moved my controller, the push button controller for the chickens, out of the way. So the idea then is you put this in like this and you've got a little sort of spreader piece of plastic to even it off, and so you get a even road surface, as it were. I think I'm going to regret putting too much on here. We shall see. Remember, no job is too small to botch. Okay, how do we go about removing some of this? So here's the little spreader that we need to move along and to give us a more even road surface. Lovely. And if we bring it back the other way, if I get out of the way of the camera, that is. Let's try and scrape some of that off. I couldn't work tight if I tried, could I? And then hopefully if I come down, straight down here like this. Whoa, might have got away with that. So there's our surface. Clearly not quite as easy as it appears on the tin. Well, needless to say, it's now the following day. But I did pop up last night and I did put some grass sort of cover in this area here for sort of cows and stuff. And what I used was from Woodland Scenic's Blended Turf, Green Blend T49. So that's what's down in here. So now we get to our little compound. Our roadway's nice and dry, so I'm going to peel off the tape from the outside and then paint up the surface. But what should I paint it with? Well, there's all these tarmac-y sort of paints, but let's do it on the cheap. So I've got some black from Hobbycraft and some white from Hobbycraft. Mix it together and we're going to get a grey. So I'll find a suitable grey, and then once I've rubbed this down a little bit, we'll paint it grey. Beautiful. Now, peeling off the tape, of course, what we ought to do is peel it away from the road, as it were. Otherwise you could end up peeling the roadway back if it hasn't quite gone off. So peel it away. And then finally lovely. There's a few little bumps, and I just take those out with some fine grade sandpaper. I've mentioned before about using Hobbycraft paints, and these are the ones that I'm going for. It's hard to know exactly what colour to mix up, but anyway, I've gone this sort of grey. And of course, if it's too light or too dark, we can always wax some more on later. And I'm sure this is going to take more than a couple of coats. Anyway, we shall see how this dries. I seem to be doing more landscaping now than actually with the chickens, and I've put in a load of bushes along here, re-ballasted this area, ballasted around this signal, and in this area here I've put down a layer of neat PVA and sprinkled in some blended turf earth blend T50 from Woodland Scenics. But what are we going to do with this main area? I thought I would ballast this area with this Cars Ballast 2mm light grey, because it all gives me a sort of an earthy look, and then we can put weeds and the other bits and bobs that's going to go in here on top of that. But I think I need to give it some kind of fibre to this area before we start with the grasses and the building. Now, I don't particularly want to ballast under the signal box, so I thought we would try to scribe the line around it, and I can avoid putting ballast underneath it. Yet another tedious job. Now we're certainly getting there. Time for some sprinkling. And as usual with the excess, I shall just vacuum cleaner it off at the end, using a stocking over the vacuum cleaner to make it reusable. Now, armed with the deadly Dyson, with an old stocking over the end to capture the ballast, hopefully we can suck up the excess. And we shall just check our chickens are still active. Lovely. So now we just need to add a little bit of detail. So we'll start with our signal box. Lovely. A vehicle. A greenhouse. Perhaps a rockery. A little bit of foliage, and to top it all off, a hen house. Marvellous. The chickens certainly think so. The hen house was an eBay purchase from Digitrains, and they come unpainted in a pack of 3. But there we have it, a light-hearted little diorama at Chadwick, and it's a bit of a giggle with the chickens, but the scene itself is starting to take shape, and I think it looks quite reasonable. But what do you think? Perhaps you'll give it a thumbs up and let me know in the comments section down below. In the meantime, I'd like to thank, as usual, the patrons who make it all possible. If you're not a subscriber, there's the old button, and for you there's a video here and here, and I'll see you in 2 weeks' time. Thanks a lot, take care. Bye bye.